My name is Jamie Bachman. I'm the Executive Director for Oncology Services at UCHealth. At the University of Colorado Cancer Center, we had experienced double-digit growth in our physician practices and in our infusion centers over the course of several years. Like many centers, we turned to traditional means to combat that. So things like extending operating hours, adding days that we treated people, even expanding some of our space in ways when we had a little bit of room for expansion. We realized, though, that to continue at that growth rate, and that is something that we are not only expecting to do, but are strategizing ways to make happen, that sooner or later we'd run out of space. What we didn't realize at the time was that things felt even busier than they really were. And we know now it was because of the way that we scheduled our patients and some of the operating workflows that we designed ourselves. We used traditional tools like Excel worksheets and structure process improvement events to improve our workflow, and some of those did help. In fact, they helped an immense amount. At the same time, it was still a noticeable crunch in our center, and so we were looking for other alternatives. Going into the project with LeanTaaS to test iQueue in our setting, I think our expectations were low. We didn't know that there was something that really could be that impactful, so we expected that it would gain us a few more appointments per day, or perhaps smooth out our curve throughout the treatment day. In reality, it's proven to be tremendously impactful in that we have decreased the amount of times that we run out of chairs during any given day substantially over the time that we've been working on this project, and it's smoothed out our workflow a lot more than we expected. It's given us the ability to create capacity that we didn't know we had, and it's been so helpful in our setting at our main academic campus that we're now scaling it to many of our regional sites throughout our health system. Like introducing many projects to any group of staff, nurses or administrative, there is a fair amount of skepticism. People don't like change, and to some extent they're scared of it. At the same time, they also knew that their life during a day of treating patients could be fairly hectic. They would come in and sit for a prolonged period with very little activity. Then they would scurry around at a frenetic pace for a short period of time. They'd often miss lunch, and then they'd end up going home late. We've seen a lot of shift in that. So first they actually really latched on to the program once they understood what it meant for them. They participated and were actively engaged in helping make it better. So we're in our fourth iteration of improving our scheduling practices through iQueue. And it's actually gelled as a team quite well because of our use of the huddles, which were incorporated as part of this project. So, for instance, each morning as they look at their activity and predict what they'll be experiencing during the day, it gives them also a chance to talk with one another as colleagues about other things outside of the schedule that they might need to be aware of, sharing staffing patterns, sharing break schedules, talking about any particular patient that they need to be looking out for whatever reason that happens to be. The utilization of our chairs throughout the day has gone from quite literally looking like a triangle to a trapezoid. And the patient flow that happens within that has been tremendously impactful. We have seen our patients come and go with scheduled arrival and departure times in a much more thoughtful way. We've seen it happen in a much more controlled way. And we think that has applications not just to our infusion centers, but to others as well. It's something that we expect to help us avoid having to build as soon as we may have had to build otherwise. It will help us to maybe limit the extension of our hours that we would have otherwise had to consider sooner. All of these things will become factors at some point, no matter what the growth that we're experiencing. We think will push that ultimately, but it's slowed that need tremendously. It's fun to round in the infusion centers in the morning as the nurses are looking at what their day is expected to be, and they look at the graph of their chair utilization. It's something that they've come to depend on. They measure their day even before it happens by what they think will happen, and it turns out to be fairly accurate most of the time. I think if we pulled that away, actually, it would be something that they would miss tremendously, and I certainly have watched them grow to not just appreciate it, but also enjoy using it as something that's part of their daily life now. So the project that we started at our main academic hospital 2 years ago has gone so well that the Infusion Centers across UCHealth are now in the process of adopting iQueue. So we've gone from one infusion center, which had 38 chairs, and we've expanded it to 7, going to 10. By the springtime, we'll have 174 chairs covered, and we'll be implementing iQueue across all of the health system. Again, just like we saw in our first experience, that it allowed us to forego expanding hours of operation any further and buildings, we think that will have the same impact at some of our smaller sites and regional sites. It turns out that the scale at our larger centers was a good demonstration for some of these smaller centers, and so it doesn't necessarily matter whether it's big or small, it can still have impact.